The Galactic Military Academy sat on a small, peaceful moon orbiting a gas giant of remarkable beauty. Its halls were filled with the best and brightest young minds from 100 species, all training to become the future leaders of the galaxy's combined defense forces. The curriculum was rigorous, the standards impossibly high, and the dropout rate was legendary. But nothing at the Academy was as legendary as the final examination. It was called Death World X7, not a real planet. No one would be foolish enough to send cadets to an actual death world, but a simulation so advanced, so immersive, that most cadets forgot it wasn't real within the first 5 minutes. The galaxy's best xenopsychologists had spent decades designing it. Every detail was calibrated to induce maximum terror in the maximum number of species. The simulation began the moment a cadet entered the pod. There was no countdown, no warning, no chance to prepare. One moment they were in the Academy's gleaming halls. The next, they were on X7. The planet was a masterpiece of horror. The sky was wrong. It shifted through colors no living being should see, colors that triggered primal fear responses in species across the galaxy. The air was thick and heavy, carrying scents that hinted at predators just out of sight. The ground was unstable, sometimes solid rock, sometimes sucking mud, sometimes something that moved like it was alive. And the predators. They came from everywhere. From shadows that should not exist. From holes in the ground that opened without warning. From the sky, descending on leathery wings with shrieks that echoed in the bones. They were not real. The cadets knew this intellectually, but the simulation made them feel real. The heat of their breath, the scrape of their claws, the weight of their gaze. Each predator was tailored to the individual cadet. The simulation read their deepest fears and manifested them in flesh and fang and terrible purpose. For a Voral cadet, the predators were drowning shadows. For a Quarn, they were crystalline entities that reflected only emptiness. For a Kral, they were ancient enemies from forgotten wars. No cadet had ever completed the simulation without psychological trauma. Most failed within hours. Some lasted a day. A few, the best of the best, endured for 2. But none finished. The simulation was designed to be unbeatable. Its purpose was not to be conquered. Its purpose was to teach. The lesson was simple. The universe is terrifying. Learn your limits. Instructors watched from the observation gallery as cadets from 100 species screamed, ran, froze, broke. They took notes. They updated psychological profiles. They identified which cadets needed additional support and which should never be placed in real combat situations. It was cruel, they knew, but it was also necessary. Better to break in a simulation than in actual combat, where broken meant dead. For 3 centuries, the simulation served its purpose. Cadets emerged shaken, weeping, sometimes catatonic. They learned their limits. They learned to respect the terror of the universe. They graduated with a healthy fear of what lay beyond the Academy's peaceful halls. Then the humans arrived. They were new to the Academy, newly admitted after their species' abrupt emergence onto the galactic stage. Their psychological profiles were unusual. Their homeworld was classified as a death world, one of the rare planets where the environment itself was actively hostile to life. The instructors debated whether to exempt them from the simulation. The humans themselves seemed confused by the concern. "It's just a simulation," one human cadet had said. "How bad can it be?" The instructors exchanged glances. They did not understand the question. It was a simulation of a death world. That was the point. Protocol required that all cadets complete the final examination. The humans would participate. The instructors prepared their observation notes, their psychological support teams, their trauma counseling protocols. They did not know that everything was about to change. On the day of the first human trial, a young woman named Maya Chen entered the simulation pod. She was small by human standards, with dark hair tied back and eyes that held a calm the instructors found unsettling. She did not fidget. She did not ask questions. She simply lay back and closed her eyes as the simulation engaged. The observation gallery filled with curious instructors and cadets from a dozen species. Word had spread that a human was attempting Death World X7. Everyone wanted to see how the new species would handle the ultimate test. The simulation began. Maya Chen opened her eyes on X7. The instructors watched their monitors. Her heart rate, her breathing, her neural activity. They waited for the spike, the surge of terror that every cadet before her had shown within the first 30 seconds. Her heart rate remained steady. Her breathing stayed calm. Her neural activity showed curiosity. On the screen, Maya-chan looked around at the nightmare landscape with an expression that was not fear. It was interest, like a tourist visiting a new city. The predators emerged from the shadows. They were tailored to her. The instructors had ensured the simulation would read her deepest fears and manifest them. They leaned forward, waiting for her reaction. Maya watched the predators approach. Her head tilted slightly. Her eyes narrowed in analysis. Then she smiled. The instructors stared. No one had ever smiled in Death World X7. No one. On the screen, Maya did not run. She walked toward the predators. Not aggressively. Not fearfully. Simply forward. The predators lunged. She sidestepped. She observed. She continued walking. The simulation tried harder. The atmosphere changed, becoming toxic. Maya found a cave and sat down waiting. She hummed to herself. The ground tried to swallow her. She stepped aside and kept walking. The sky shifted through its impossible colors. She glanced up, noted the change, and looked away. Hours passed. The instructors stopped taking notes. They simply watched, their faces frozen in expressions of disbelief. Maya-chan walked through their perfect nightmare like a woman out for a stroll. And she smiled the entire time. The debate among the instructors lasted 3 standard cycles. It was heated, passionate, and ultimately pointless. The Voral xenopsychologist argued passionately for exemption. Their homeworld is classified as a Class 12 Death World, she said, her bioluminescence flickering with concern. The simulation was designed to terrify species from stable, civilized worlds. We have no data on how a Death World native will react. The psychological impact could be unpredictable. It could be dangerous. The Quarren engineer agreed. Our models cannot account for their baseline. If their normal experience includes environmental hostility, the simulation's terror parameters may be completely ineffective. Or worse, they may find it stimulating. The Crawl tactical instructor, a battle-scarred veteran, had a different concern. If they survive it too easily, it will demoralize the other cadets. The lesson of the simulation is that the universe is terrifying. If a human walks through it unscathed, what lesson do the others learn? The debate continued. Arguments were made. Data was presented. Theories were proposed and dismantled. In the end, none of it mattered. Protocol was protocol. The human cadets had been admitted to the academy. They were required to complete the final examination like everyone else. No exceptions. The first human to enter the simulation was Maya-chan. She was 22 standard years old, small even by human standards, with dark hair pulled back in a practical knot and eyes the color of Earth's deep oceans. She had scored at the top of her class in every exercise, but her psychological profile was unusual. The Academy's assessment software had flagged her file 17 times before giving up and marking it inconclusive. The observation gallery was crowded. Instructors who had no professional reason to attend found reasons. Cadets from a dozen species crowded the viewing platforms, eager to see how the strange new species would handle the ultimate test. Whispers filled the air in a dozen languages. Is she scared? She doesn't look scared. Humans don't show fear the same way. It's probably internal. Her vitals are on screen. Look at them. They're completely flat. The head instructor, a venerable Voral named Vex, watched her monitors with clinical intensity. Maya-chan's heart rate, 62 beats per minute, perfectly normal for a human at rest. Her breathing, 12 breaths per minute, steady and calm. Her neural activity, showing patterns associated with focused attention, not fear. The simulation engaged. On the main screen, Maya-chan opened her eyes on Death World X7. The sky was wrong. It churned with colors that had driven Quarren cadets to screaming fits within seconds. Maya glanced up, noted the colors, and looked away. Her heart rate did not change. The air thickened, becoming heavy and oppressive. Maya took a breath, exhaled slowly, and continued walking. Her breathing remained steady. The ground shifted beneath her feet, trying to unbalance her. She adjusted her stance without visible effort, her weight shifting smoothly to maintain stability. She did not stumble. She did not flinch. In the gallery, the Voral xenopsychologist made a small, involuntary sound. It might have been a gasp. The predators emerged. They were tailored to Maya's deepest fears. The simulation's core programming ensured it. What those fears were, no one knew. Human psychology was still largely a mystery. But the simulation had read her mind and manifested something terrible. They were large. Fast. Multiple. They moved with the coordinated precision of pack hunters, surrounding her, cutting off escape routes. Their eyes glowed with hungry intelligence. Their claws scraped against the corrupted ground. Maya stopped walking. She looked at the predators. Her head tilted slightly, the way a scholar might examine an interesting specimen. Her eyes narrowed in analysis. Then she smiled. In the gallery, 17 instructors leaned forward simultaneously. Cadets gasped. The crawl tactical instructor's mandibles fell open. No one smiled in Death World X7. No one. In 3 centuries of simulations across 100 species, no sentient being had ever smiled in the presence of those predators. On the screen, Maya began walking again, directly toward the largest predator. It lunged. She sidestepped, not frantically, not desperately, but with the casual grace of someone stepping around a puddle. The predator's claws raked empty air. Maya continued walking. Another predator attacked from the side. She ducked under its swipe without breaking stride. A third came from behind. She pivoted smoothly, avoiding its charge, and kept moving. The predators regrouped. They circled her, trying to coordinate. Maya watched them with that same analytical expression, her smile never wavering. "You're pack hunters," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. "You coordinate. You flank. You isolate." She paused, watching their movements. "I grew up in a city where packs like this ran the streets. You're slower, less organized, and you telegraph your attacks." The predators lunged again. Maya moved through them like water through rocks. Not fighting, not fleeing, simply existing in their midst, untouchable. The simulation tried harder. The atmosphere changed, becoming toxic. Maya found a cave and sat down, waiting. She hummed to herself, a simple melody that carried through the observation gallery's audio feed. The tune was cheerful, upbeat, completely inappropriate for a death world. The ground tried to swallow her. She moved to stable rock and continued humming. The sky shifted through its impossible colors. She glanced up, noted the change, and returned to her melody. Hours passed. The gallery's initial shock gave way to something else. The cadets who had come to watch a human fail now watched with expressions of dawning wonder. The instructors had stopped taking notes. They simply stared. Maya-chan walked through their perfect nightmare like a tourist in a mildly interesting park. And she smiled the entire time. At the 6-hour mark, the simulation automatically terminated. It had never run this long. The programming assumed no cadet would last more than 2 hours. Maya emerged from the pod, blinking in the academy's bright lights. She looked around at the stunned faces in the observation gallery. She saw the Voral xenopsychologist, her bioluminescence frozen in a pattern of pure disbelief. She saw the crawl tactical instructor, his mandibles still hanging open. She saw cadets from a dozen species staring at her like she was something from a nightmare of their own. She smiled again. It was a friendly smile, genuine and warm. "That was interesting," she said. "Do you have any harder ones?" No one answered. No one could. The predators came from the shadows like nightmares given flesh. They were large, fast, and coordinated, their movements synchronized with a precision that spoke of centuries of evolution as pack hunters. Their eyes glowed with hungry intelligence. Their claws scraped against the corrupted ground, leaving furrows in the toxic soil. Maya-chan watched them come. She did not run. She did not scream. She did not reach for a weapon or look for an escape route. She simply stood there, her head tilted slightly, her dark eyes tracking their approach with an expression of genuine interest. In the observation gallery, 17 instructors leaned forward simultaneously. Cadets pressed against the viewing platforms, their breaths held, their hearts racing in sympathetic terror. The lead predator lunged. Maya sidestepped. The movement was not desperate or frantic. It was smooth, almost casual, like a pedestrian stepping around a puddle on a city sidewalk. The predator's claws raked empty air. It stumbled off balance, and Maya continued walking past it without a backward glance. A second predator attacked from the side. Maya ducked under its swipe, her body folding gracefully, her stride never breaking. A third came from behind. She pivoted smoothly, avoiding its charge by inches, and kept moving. The predators regrouped. They circled her, trying to coordinate their attack, trying to find the pattern in her movements. Maya watched them with that same analytical expression, her pace never slowing. "You're pack hunters," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational, as if she were discussing the weather. "You coordinate. You flank. You isolate prey by cutting off escape routes." She paused, watching their circling pattern. I grew up in a city where packs like this ran the streets every night. You're slower, less organized, and you telegraph your attacks. The predators lunged again. Maya moved through them like water through rocks. She stepped between their charges, ducked under their swipes, pivoted around their lunges. She did not fight them. She did not need to. She simply existed in their midst, untouchable, unhurried, unharmed. The simulation tried something else. The atmosphere changed. The air thickened, becoming heavy and toxic, the kind of atmosphere that would kill most species within minutes. Maya glanced up, noted the change, and immediately began walking toward a rock formation she had spotted earlier. She found a cave, a narrow opening in the rock face, just large enough for a human to squeeze through. She crawled inside and sat down, her back against the cool stone, her expression calm. The toxic air could not reach her here. The predators could not follow. She was safe. She began to hum. The melody was simple, cheerful, utterly at odds with the nightmare raging outside. It floated through the cave's narrow opening and echoed across the corrupted landscape. In the observation gallery, the audio feed carried the sound to stunned listeners. The Voral xenopsychologist recognized the tune. It was a children's song from Earth. A lullaby. The ground began to shake. The cave walls trembled. The floor beneath Maya cracked and shifted, trying to swallow her. She stood smoothly, stepped to a stable section of rock, and sat down again. The humming continued without interruption. The ground cracked again. Maya moved again. Step. Sit. Hum. It became a rhythm. The ground attacked. Maya adjusted. The ground attacked again. Maya adjusted again. Her expression never changed. Her melody never wavered. After an hour, the ground gave up. The simulation, frustrated by its inability to terrify her, moved to its next tactic. The sky changed. Colors that should not exist swirled overhead, shades that triggered primal fear responses in species across the galaxy. The Voral saw drowning in those colors. The Quarn saw emptiness. The Crawl saw the faces of ancient enemies. Maya glanced up, noted the colors, and looked away. Pretty, she said. In the gallery, the Crawl tactical instructor made a sound that might have been a strangled laugh, or a cry of despair. No one was sure. The hours passed. Maya walked through the nightmare landscape with the unhurried pace of a tourist on holiday. She observed predators with professional interest, noting their behavior patterns for future reference. She waited out environmental hazards in caves and rock shelters, humming her cheerful melodies. She stepped aside when the ground tried to swallow her, ducked when the sky rained poison, smiled when the shadows reached for her. She was not surviving the nightmare. She was enjoying it. At hour 4, the simulation tried its ultimate weapon. It manifested Maya's deepest fear, the one thing the xenopsychologists had been unable to identify. The shadows coalesced into a shape, a figure, something from her past. Maya stopped walking. She looked at the figure for a long moment. Her expression shifted, not to fear, but to something else. Something sad. "Hello, grandfather," she said quietly. The figure did not speak. It simply stood there, a ghost from her childhood, representing something the simulation had misinterpreted as terror. Maya walked past it. "That's not my fear," she said. "That's my memory. I loved him. You can't use love as a weapon." The simulation had no response. It had never encountered this before. Love was not a data point in its terror algorithms. At hour 6, the simulation automatically terminated. Its programming assumed no cadet would last longer than 2 hours. It had no protocols for what to do when a subject simply refused to be terrified. Maya emerged from the pod, blinking in the academy's bright lights. She looked around at the stunned faces in the observation gallery. She saw the Voral xenopsychologist, her bioluminescence frozen in a pattern of pure disbelief. She saw the Crawl tactical instructor, his mandibles still hanging open. She saw cadets from a dozen species staring at her like she was something from a nightmare of their own. She smiled. It was a friendly smile, genuine and warm. "That was interesting," she said. "The pack predators need better coordination. They're too predictable." She paused, considering. "Do you have any harder ones?" No one answered. No one could. In the silence that followed, the Voral xenopsychologist finally found her voice. It was barely a whisper. She was humming. The entire time. She was humming a children's song. The Crawl tactical instructor closed his mandibles with a click. What kind of world produces people who hum through nightmares? No one had an answer. But for the first time in 3 centuries, the instructors of the Galactic Military Academy began to understand that they had been asking the wrong questions about humanity. They had been trying to teach humans to fear the universe. The humans, it seemed, had been born on a world that had already taught them something else entirely. The silence in the observation gallery was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The head instructor, a venerable Voral named Vex, was the first to find her voice. Her bioluminescence flickered erratically, betraying an emotional state she had not experienced in 3 centuries of teaching. "How?" she asked. Maya considered the question. Her head tilted slightly, the same analytical gesture she had used while observing the nightmare predators. She took her time, formulating an answer that would actually address what was being asked. "The predators," she said finally. "They moved like pack hunters from my homeworld. The coordination was similar. The flanking patterns. The way they tried to isolate me from escape routes." She paused. "They were slower, though. Less efficient. And they telegraphed their attacks. The packs in my city were harder to predict." Vex's bioluminescence flickered. "Your city has pack-hunting predators?" "Well, not literal predators. Gangs. Criminal organizations. They hunt in packs, they coordinate, they isolate targets." Maya shrugged. "You learn to read them. You learn to move through them. You learn that running triggers the chase response, so you don't run. You walk. You stay calm. You make yourself a harder target than the next person." The crawl tactical instructor leaned forward. "And the atmosphere? It became toxic within the first hour. Most species cannot survive more than a few minutes in those conditions." Maya nodded. "The air quality in my childhood city was classified as hazardous by environmental agencies. Not as bad as the simulation, but close. You learn to monitor air advisories. You learn when to stay indoors. You learn to find shelter." She paused. The cave was obvious. Good airflow, stable structure. "I've slept in worse places." "The ground," another instructor said. "It shifted constantly. It tried to swallow you." "Construction sites," Maya said. "My city was always building something new. The ground was never stable. You learn to watch where you step. You learn to feel the shifts before they happen." She smiled slightly. The simulation's ground was actually more predictable than real construction zones. Fewer unexpected holes. Vex stared at her. Her bioluminescence had frozen in a pattern of pure white, the Voral equivalent of complete, utter incomprehension. "You are saying," she said slowly, "that the simulation we designed to terrify the best cadets from 100 species was less dangerous than your everyday life." Maya considered this. Her expression was thoughtful, not defensive. "Not less dangerous," she said. "Different. You designed this to be terrifying. But terror is relative. My planet has been trying to kill me since the day I was born. Earthquakes, hurricanes, predators, diseases, wars, pollution, political instability." She ticked them off on her fingers, each one a casual footnote. "We evolved on a world that doesn't care if we live or die. We learned to adapt. We learned to survive. We learned that panic gets you killed." She paused, looking around at the stunned faces. "You designed this to teach cadets that the universe is terrifying. But we already know that. We've always known that. The universe is terrifying. So is our homeworld. So is our weather. So are our neighbors. We've been living in a death world since before we were human." She smiled again, that same warm, genuine smile. "This wasn't a nightmare for me. This was just a walk in the park." The crawl tactical instructor was the first to speak. His voice was rough, almost awed. "What would terrify you?" Maya thought about it. She took her time, considering the question with the same analytical attention she had given the predators. "I don't know," she admitted. "Something that didn't make sense. Something that couldn't be predicted or understood or adapted to. Something that wasn't just trying to kill me, but trying to—" She trailed off, searching for words. "Trying to make me not matter. To erase me without effort. To prove that my survival was meaningless." She shook her head. "But your simulation wasn't that. Your simulation was just nature. Hostile nature. And I've been dealing with that my whole life." Vex slowly lowered herself into her chair. Her bioluminescence had returned to a weak, uncertain flicker. "We have been teaching cadets to fear the universe," she said. "We thought that was wisdom. We thought that was preparation. But you—" She looked at Maya with something approaching reverence. "You were born knowing what we try so hard to teach. Your entire species was." Maya shrugged. "We had a head start. Our planet is mean." The Voral xenopsychologist made a small, strangled sound. The Quarn engineer's facets rotated rapidly, capturing every angle of this impossible moment. The Kral tactical instructor's mandibles twitched in something that might have been, for his species, the beginning of a smile. "The simulation," Vex said. "You completed it. You're the first in Academy history. Do you have any feedback? Suggestions for improvement?" She paused, and she wanted the simulation to be harder. Vex found her voice. "You want us to make the simulation more difficult?" Maya smiled. "Sure. Got any harder ones?" The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. The instructors looked at each other. They did not have harder ones. They had spent 3 centuries designing the perfect nightmare, calibrated to terrify the best cadets from 100 species. They had never imagined that a species might exist for whom their nightmare was merely interesting. The Kral tactical instructor stood slowly. His ancient, battle-scarred face was unreadable, but something in his posture had changed. Something that looked, from a certain angle, like respect. "You come from a hard world, human," he said. Maya nodded. "We do. But we also come from a beautiful one. Sunsets, oceans, music, love." She paused. "You have to take the bad with the good. That's what survival means. Not just enduring the bad, but finding the good anyway." She smiled again, that warm, genuine smile that seemed utterly out of place in a conversation about death worlds and nightmare simulations. "Your simulation taught me something, actually. Not about fear. About perspective." She looked around at the stunned faces. "For the first time in my life, I spent 6 hours in an environment that wasn't actively trying to kill me in new and creative ways. That was nice. Relaxing, even." She stretched, casual and comfortable. "So thank you. For the walk in the park." She walked out of the debriefing room, leaving 17 instructors and dozens of cadets staring after her in complete, utter, absolute silence. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, the Voral xenopsychologist whispered, "She thanked us. For the nightmare. She said it was relaxing." The Kral tactical instructor nodded slowly. "We have been teaching cadets to fear the universe. But the humans have been teaching themselves to find moments of peace within it." He paused, his ancient eyes fixed on the door through which Maya had departed. "I think we have more to learn from them than they from us." The silence that followed was different from before. It was the silence of a new beginning, of old certainties replaced by new questions, of a galaxy that had just realized it had been looking at humanity all wrong. And somewhere in the Academy's halls, Maya Chin was humming a cheerful tune as she walked toward the cafeteria, already thinking about lunch. The announcement came 3 days after Maya Chin walked out of the simulation pod. It was brief, formal, and utterly unprecedented. Effective immediately, the Death World X-7 final examination is suspended indefinitely. Cadets currently scheduled for the simulation will receive alternative assessments. Further details to follow, ****. The Academy's halls buzzed with speculation. Cadets from 100 species gathered in common areas, mess halls, and training yards, debating what it meant. Some thought the simulation had malfunctioned. Others believed a political decision had been made. A few, those who had been in the observation gallery, knew the truth but found themselves unable to explain it to those who had not witnessed. The official reason, when it was finally released, did little to clarify. After careful review, the Academy has determined that the Death World X-7 simulation does not serve its intended pedagogical purpose. The concept of limits has been found to be more relative than previously understood. A new approach to final examinations is being developed. The Voral xenopsychologist who had drafted the statement spent 3 hours staring at her screen before sending it. She had rewritten it 17 times, trying to capture the truth without admitting that a single human had rendered 3 centuries of Academy doctrine obsolete. In the end, she settled for honesty wrapped in bureaucracy. The Kral tactical instructor took a different approach. He sought out Maya Chin in the Academy's mess hall, where she was eating lunch with a group of human cadets who had arrived after her. They were laughing about something, some joke he did not understand, and Maya's smile was as warm and genuine as it had been in the simulation. He sat down across from her without invitation. His massive, armored frame drew stares from every corner of the room, but he ignored them. "I have a question," he said. Maya looked up, her expression curious but unafraid. "Go ahead. Your species. You have been spacefaring for less than a century. You have no military alliances, no strategic partnerships, no protection agreements with any major power. You are, by galactic standards, utterly exposed." He paused. Yet you have never asked for our protection. You have never requested defensive guarantees. Why? Maya considered the question. Around her, the other human cadets had fallen silent, watching the exchange with interest. Protection implies vulnerability, she said. It implies that someone else can keep us safe. But we've never been safe. Not really. Not on Earth. She shrugged. We learned a long time ago that no one is coming to save us. If we want to survive, we have to do it ourselves. The crawl tactical instructor nodded slowly. And the simulation? You smiled through our worst nightmare. You asked for harder challenges. What did that teach you about yourself? Maya was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. It taught me that fear is relative. That what terrifies one person is just another person's Tuesday. That the universe isn't trying to kill us specifically, it's just indifferent. And indifference, I've learned, is easier to deal with than active hostility. She paused. On Earth, things are actively hostile. The weather wants to drown you. The ground wants to swallow you. The animals want to eat you. Other humans want to take what you have. You learn to adapt, to anticipate, to survive. She smiled again. Your simulation was just nature. Hostile nature. But we've been dealing with that since before we were human. The crawl tactical instructor sat in silence for a long moment. His ancient, battle-scarred face was unreadable, but something in his posture had shifted. Something that looked, from a certain angle, like understanding. We designed the simulation to teach cadets their limits, he said. We wanted them to know fear, to respect it, to understand that the universe is larger and more dangerous than they can imagine. He paused. But you have no limits. Not the kind we understand. Your entire species was born on the other side of the equation. Maya shook her head. We have limits. We just don't know what they are yet. Every time we think we've found them, someone pushes past them. That's what we do. We push. She gestured at the other human cadets around her. Ask them. They'll tell you the same thing. We don't know how hard the universe can hit. But we're willing to find out. A calm acceptance of danger. A quiet confidence that they could handle whatever came next. He stood slowly, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. I have trained warriors for 800 years, he said. I have seen courage and fear and everything in between. But I have never seen anything quite like you. He paused. The Academy will not redesign the simulation. We cannot. We do not know how to make it harder for you. And we are beginning to understand that we do not need to. He looked at Maya, his ancient eyes holding something that might have been respect. You have nothing to learn from our nightmares. But we have much to learn from your reality. So, one of them said, does this mean we don't have to do the final exam? Maya laughed. I think it means we are the final exam. The word spread. Not through official channels, but through the whispers and rumors that traveled faster than any bureaucracy. The Death World simulation had been cancelled because a human had smiled through it. The Academy's oldest, most terrifying test had been rendered obsolete by a species that had been born on a world that made the simulation look like a vacation. Other species began to watch humans more closely. They studied their history, their psychology, their art and music and literature. They tried to understand what kind of beings could walk through a nightmare and ask for something harder. What they found was confusing. A species that had endured ice ages and famines and wars and plagues. That had invented weapons capable of destroying themselves and then somehow chosen not to use them. That had looked at a hostile universe and decided to explore it anyway, not because they were fearless, but because fear had never stopped them before. They were not immune to terror. They simply refused to let terror define them. Maya Chen graduated at the top of her class. She went on to a career that no one had predicted, not as a warrior or a diplomat or a strategist, but as an instructor. She taught new cadets from 100 species about the nature of fear and the relativity of limits. She never used the Death World simulation. She did not need to. Instead, she told stories. About her childhood city, with its gangs and pollution and unstable ground. About the pack hunters she had learned to read. About the nights she had slept in abandoned buildings because home was not safe. And when her students asked how she had survived, she smiled that warm, genuine smile and said, "Same way you will. One step at a time. And never stop moving." The Academy never rebuilt the simulation. They did not need to. They had learned that the ultimate test was not a machine that manufactured terror, but a species that had been born in it. And for the first time, they understood why humanity had never asked for their protection. Because humanity had never needed it. They had been protecting themselves since before they were human. And they would keep doing it, with or without the galaxy's help. The universe was terrifying, but so were they.